This may be one or two parts here. I'm just, gonna run through some of this stuff here. We'll see how far we get, and we're gonna take a look at our good buddy Tom Lyden, Fox 9 News reporter, and this report that he put out in 2016. January 11th, 2016 looks like when this broadcast first. So we'll go ahead and do a little screen share here. And let's go ahead and we'll take a listen and watch. Not sure how well my audio is going to come out, so I'm actually going to run a little test here before we get there. I do not have my regular audio today. Apologize for that. Such is life, right? I've been wanting to look at some of Tom Lyden stuff for me. Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, audio's pretty bad here. So we'll see. Let's see how far I get. May have to redo this one later on as well. Let me go and see if I can adjust this mic setting. Microphone. Voice speed is fine. And speech recognition. Just want the microphone. Okay, I guess. Just have permissions there. All right. Well, we'll just make do with the best that we can do here with the short amount of time we have. Such is life, right? It sure is. Okay, let's see. That's not okay. Input. Let's see if this changes anything here. All right, testing 1 2 3. Test 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. A little better. All right, here we go. Enough of that. Let's look at Tom Lyden and his news report here. This should be fun. All right, let me start and play this here. Go full screen. Gotta love StreamYard here. Okay, let's go.
New and disturbing details we've never heard before. Tom Lyden of the Fox 9 Investigators has been given unprecedented access, and he's here to tell us what he's learned. And Tom, some of this will be very difficult.
Some of it will be, but I think you're going to see that it's important at this point to really get all the facts out on the table. I think that's the most important thing here. For the last year, this case has become the subject of much speculation and plenty of theories on the internet, most of it completely wrong. The reality is the truth of what happened.
Oh yeah, that's pretty bad too. Yeah, definitely having some audio issues there. So let's see, can I change the speakers? I may need to actually just plug in. Oh, live tests. This is what happens, right? Okay. Okay, there we go. Let's try this again. You have to hear Tom Lyden again, guys. All right, January 11th, 2016.
And he's here to tell us what he's learned. And Tom, some of this will be very difficult to hear.
Some of it will be, but I think you're going to see that it's important at this point to really get all the facts out on the table. I think that's the most important thing here. For the last year, this case has become the subject of much speculation and plenty of theories on the internet, most of it completely wrong. The reality is the truth of what happened to David Crowley.
So there it is. We got to get all the facts out, right? It's all about the facts right there. So he wants to put all of that out. Guess how many facts are in this news report that come out? I bet you can guess how many are and how many aren't. All right. This guy's too much, man. So, but it's just interesting that he makes sure to put that out there for people. Okay, so let's continue on.
Crowley and his family is stranger and sadder than anyone imagined.
Yeah, it's stranger and sadder.
To the right of the RPC.
Yeah, it's stranger and sadder because this guy could not get some of these simple, basic things right. Number one, what proves David Crowley guilty? Couldn't even get that right. So that's the strangest and saddest thing here so far.
Dead bodies inside the house, dog inside, sees a gun in the house on the floor.
To look at the three of them through the Instagram filter of life, it's hard to imagine how it all went so wrong. David Crowley, a talented, promising young filmmaker, his smart and beautiful wife, Kamel, a dietitian, and their adorable 5-year-old daughter, Rania, living on a quiet street in Apple Valley, in a home that contained their many dreams and one horrific nightmare.
This is the ideal family, seemingly, and everything went terribly wrong.
My impression is it was very intense in the early days.
Everything went terribly wrong. And you can see in this news report here, 14 minutes, they're never able to prove what they believe went terribly wrong. They're never able to prove any of that. They're never able to tie this crime to David Crowley. Isn't that interesting?
Of this investigation.
Apple Valley police recently closed their exhaustive year-long investigation, and for the first time are sharing their findings with the Fox 9 investigators.
The Fox 9 investigators.
As you sit here today, a year later, do you have an idea of what those final moments looked like?
It was horrifying. You have a tragic loss of an entire family. It looks like David snapped and took the lives of his wife and daughter.
He says it's horrifying when being asked what it was like in those last days. And yet he doesn't give any indication, any evidence of showing what it was like in those last days. That's pretty horrifying to me.
And then ultimately himself. And it was a very sad scene, during the holidays, a beautiful family, and just tragically lost.
And from the start,
beautiful family, just tragically lost. But again, not giving you any of those quote-unquote facts that Tom Lyden says that we have, or that is most important. He admits that it's most important to get the facts. We all would agree on that. I sure would hope so, right? Unless you're hiding something about this case, you would definitely want to agree on that. Unless you really hate David and you just want to believe that he's this murderer, this gruesome killer. Otherwise, you would definitely want the facts, and you would want to make sure that we get those. We don't get those here. Spoiler alert. We don't get those here.
The case wrapped in suspicion and mystery.
Here's the red flags.
With paranoid theories all over the internet.
Guys out here going after the truth get knocked off.
That the Crowleys were murdered as some kind of government conspiracy.
Isn't it a paranoid theory to say that this guy snapped? That he killed his family? Wouldn't that be a paranoid theory? That's what I would say it is. And who do you blame for that paranoid theory? The police? But they only want to look at one side of it. They want to look at what they think, the paranoid theory. Wouldn't it be paranoid? Wouldn't it be presumptuous? Wouldn't it be wrong to accuse somebody without some quote-unquote facts, some evidence?
Did the government want to silence him and his film?
All because of a personal...
These are like, they only give you two sides that you can join in on. They either say David snapped or the government did it. That's it. That's all they're giving you. They're playing with your mind. They're treating you like little children, and they're hoping that you will just go away. Stop paying attention to this. Forget about David Crowley. Tuck your tail and run. And you know what? Unfortunately, a lot of people did that. But it ain't going to happen here.
No film project David Crowley had worked on obsessively for years, called Gray State.
They always, and that's the other thing, these key words, obsessively. He was working on this obsessively. He was working on other things too. And he wasn't the only one who was working on this. So any obsession, you can't just give all of that credit to just David, right? There's other people working on this stuff too. How come they don't get accused of the obsessive aspect of this, right? It's just David. He's the only one who's obsessed, even though you have all these other people who want to take credit, who won't be saying, I was there, we were part of it, etc., etc. But David is the only one obsessing over it. Really interesting thinking here. But those key words, and we're going to hear a lot of that throughout this horrible news report, sloppy-mentary report. I'm give you the worst.
This is a concept trailer for Gray State, which imagines the U.S. government taking away all our liberties. FEMA turning into a militarized, occupying police force.
In short, the Gray State is the culminating manifestation of the darkest trends our negligence and malignancy have to offer.
Because I think at the tail end of it, he was living the Gray State.
Danny Mason was a co-producer on Gray State.
It almost embodied him, almost to the extent of where it would dictate a lot of his thoughts and his ideas and his, I guess, outlook in reality.
Investigators spent months sifting through 20 terabytes of video. David Crowley.
Guess what they found? Sifting through all of those terabytes of video of everything. Guess what they found to help prove David Crowley guilty? Nothing.
He had kept on more than a dozen hard drives, looking for clues.
How much of this do you think had to do with the film?
I think a great deal. From all accounts,
I think a great deal, meaning we don't know anything. We think this, we think that, but what do we know? Nothing. That is such a key phrase here, such a key part of this. It's just fascinating how crazy this is.
He was consumed with producing this film, and
again, we're going back to the obsession, the consume. Danny Mason is saying it. All these people got their ducks lined in a row, all lined up. The same story, the same thing, the same phrase. I want you to look at this guy's face here for a minute here. I'll be right back, folks. Continue on.
It's a dark topic. You're talking about conspiracy theories and potentially the fall of society. And if you're focusing on that day in and day out, and those are materials you're working with, and you're filming exclusively on that topic, that can take you to a very bad place.
That's the thing. It can take you to a very bad place, but there's no evidence showing that it took David to a very bad place. This was taking David to other places. This was David getting his foot in the door, moving forward, planning for other projects, using this as a stepping stone to get in to the Hollywood world. He hadn't made it into Hollywood yet.
Do you think he literally went down the rabbit hole of these conspiracy theories and just couldn't separate himself from it?
I believe so.
And how does that equate to murder? How does any of that equate to murder? There has to be some evidence. They have to be able to provide some facts here. That is their job. I think so. We think. We believe. It's never what they know. It's never what they know, and it's never what they can prove, because they can't prove anything. This report pretty much lays it all out. It pretty much lays out the foundation for Eric Nelson's sloppumentary, A Gray State. It's all connected. Alec Wilkinson's news report, Death of a Dystopian. These three projects are all tied in. They're all related. They were all being made at the same time. They were all being made for the same purpose. And they all had the same message. That's coordination.
In the summer of 2014, Crowley traveled to Hollywood to meet with producers interested in Gray State. But by fall, the deal had fizzled, and the couple began withdrawing from friends and family. Kamel had told her family,
"This is not true." Now, we only know this because Dan Hinnon spoke with Mike Boggio of Michael Entertainment Group. We know the deal did not, quote unquote, falter. There was no faltering of a deal. The deal was there. The deal was in the works. But the deal only died because David died. They don't tell you that. And they know this stuff. I know they know this. If we know it, they know it. But they hide it. They're twisting it. They're not being honest to their viewers. And that's a big problem. Because it shouldn't be about them trying to prove David Crowley guilty in the court of public opinion. If they could, they would have. And they tried, but they failed. And they're going to keep failing. The truth is not on their side. Because the truth is simple, and the truth does not change. In order to say that it's true David Crowley killed his family and killed himself, you have to present some facts. And if you can't, then don't be frustrated. Don't be mad at the people that call you out on it. Be mad at yourself for believing something as stupid as that. That's who you need to be mad at. And what else could you be tricked on? If you're so easily tricked by that, boy, I don't know. You could be tricked by a lot of different things at that point. And that's not good. That's not what the world needs. That's not what this country needs. Especially if we really want to find out what happened here. You do an investigation to find out what happened. You don't begin with the theory that David Crowley is guilty. You begin with that theory, chances are you're probably going to come up with some things. Unfortunately, they couldn't even do that. All they could say in the end was, well, we couldn't find anybody else that did it, so it must have been David. This is why this is such a slam dunk case here. Only a few minutes in. But this is why this case is just such a very simple slam dunk case. For this reason.
She was the sole breadwinner. That she was not physically or emotionally abused. But
the thing was the sole breadwinner, again, it really, and we talked about this recently on one of the recent podcasts, like, who was taking care of who? Was David taking care of her? Was she taking care of David? I mean, to me, with the $14,000 check in their mailbox, or not in their mailbox, left on their doorstep from David's dad, there's a pretty good argument he was taking care of them. He was going to take care of them. He wasn't going to let them fall or struggle where they would descend into this madness or anything like that. Sounds like they were going to be taken care of. And then we know the $30 million deal and all that stuff. Not that David was going to get $30 million, but the budget, what they were budgeting for this project was about $30 million, according to the Michael Entertainment Group. Why we don't see that here? It doesn't fit in with their narrative. It doesn't fit in with what they want you to think about David Crowley. These people are very desperate. Tom Lyden just comes off as very desperate. The police come off, not the whole police, but this captain or Chief Wrightskull, I think, comes off as very desperate to try to convince people that David Crowley did this without giving you any factual data that says this is why he did it. really based on his movie, he killed his family and killed himself, and all. Really, we're supposed to believe all that with everything that we know about what happened inside of that house. We're supposed to believe, oh yes, it has everything. They believe it has a lot to do with his movie. Come on.
The financial struggles made her question the marriage.
The financial struggles they were talking about, I don't know. I mean, you can argue that either way, but again, both of the parents, David's parents and Kamel's parents, were both helping them. A $14,000 check on their front doorstep, I think they would have been all right for at least another year or so. What do you think? Kamel's father is the one who bought David a car, I think, for his birthday, and was paying their phone bills up until like October of 2014. Some of the issues that have been reported about Kamel's family and David, I think, are greatly exaggerated. That's what I think. I could be wrong, but from what I've heard, there wasn't that much of a big problem. From what we've heard from Kamel's father, wasn't that much of a problem. No.
He just lost his way, financially lost his way.
See, when you say he financially lost his way, and this guy is supposed to be a friend of David Crowley, that David financially lost his way. What does that mean? Did he have millions and then he lost it? Was he broke? Was he going broke? No. And Mason Hendricks was a guy who was not very happy that the $14,000 check was mentioned in the police reports. Why do you think that was? That doesn't fit in with what he's telling you here, right? Because he's telling you they've financially lost their way, and then come to find out there's a $14,000 check on the front door. And then David has a working deal. We come to find that out. Why are these people lying? Why are they trying to steer a narrative that doesn't need to be steered? State whatever you think. State your opinions, but man, have it based on something. Don't just discredit your friend, a soldier, a filmmaker, a young man. Let everything go for him. Don't just discredit it without having some basis in facts. And they don't. They don't have any facts. That's why this guy won't ever debate me, which he should. He should. But he politely declined. And there's very few people that would even be worth the time to debate. I think we can all agree on that. This guy would be one of them. Danny August Mason would be another one. David's brother would be another
one. Life, stress.
When his friend Mason Hendricks stopped by to see him,
he's guessing. Life, stress. I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to say here. Just like he's just making it up as he goes along here. Just making it all up. Very sad. Sad stuff, guys and gals. Okay, let's keep going.
Like meeting someone he didn't know. David wouldn't even invite him in the home.
He looked like he literally was sleeping, and breathing on his computer. Failure was not an option for him.
By October,
that's another interesting quote. I did put that in my book. Failure was not an option for him. But then he's going to say, this guy pretty much gives you more motive why David wouldn't kill himself, because failure is not an option. But then he kills himself as the only option. I mean, this guy, Mason Hendricks, just really does not make sense. His story does not line up. It just does not add up. I just feel like he's just blowing smoke out of his ass, pretty much. He's just making it up as he goes along. I don't know. That's kind of how I felt about it. Best case scenario, at least.
Family was essentially cut off from the world. David and Kamel stopped talking to their families, asking everyone to stay away, even changing their phone numbers.
See, they don't mention the changing the phone number. They didn't change their phone numbers. Kamel's dad stopped paying the bills, so they had to get new phone numbers. And they gave David's brother and gave David's mom and gave David's dad his new number. They all got his new number before he died. Why isn't Tom Lyden telling you that? I mean, this is another hit piece on David Crowley, and there's no need for it. Just give us the facts. Tell us what you know, but making up all this stuff that can be completely disproven, I mean, it raises eyebrows to these guys. Why would they do this? Are they that dumb? Tom Lyden is supposed to be a journalist, and he doesn't know better? He has no journalistic ethics? No knowledge of how to do a journalism piece? Or is there more to it?
Brother left their Christmas presents on the front step to avoid a confrontation.
He mentions the brother left the Christmas presents on the front door. But what does he not mention? What does he forget to mention? The $14,000 check in this brown paper bag here. He wasn't just leaving presents. He was leaving mail there too. Why'd you forget that, Tom? So it makes me wonder, were people just feeding Tom Lyden stuff like people may have been feeding other people things to only focus on certain things, to avoid certain facts of this case? Pretty interesting stuff here. We're not done with Tom Lyden by a long shot. Now, I know in the past, in the podcast that we've done a while ago, thought we were going to be done with Tom Lyden, but obviously that is not the case. So as time goes on, time wanders on, and we'll I don't know, we'll continue here. The audio may not be that great, so I may end up redoing all of this here. Sometimes it's better the second time around, right? So we'll see if this makes, I know the audio is bad because I don't have my regular microphone here, but you know, I've been wanting to talk about this for a very, very long time, and I'm just glad I'm able to now. These few minutes I have left here, we'll try to get through this. Can we make it? All right, so moving on.
And there the gift stayed for 3 weeks, until January 17th last year.
For 3 weeks. So again, they have to make sure they push the 3-week narrative, which is not based on the autopsy reports. It's based on David's internet activity. It's not based on the decomp rate. It's based on the internet activity. It's based on the activity from the house, as if that means that they're all dead, all right? We're not going to look at any other scenarios. We're not going to look at possible hostage situations or anything like that. No, we're just going to focus on the one thing there, and that's it. And that's what they do. I mean, it's just, and it's interesting. You see one person do it, then you see a few people do it, and then all of a sudden you have a lot of people doing it, and it's not just one person. I think that's what makes it very interesting to me, that it's like a program. There's just different people following along with this program here and just going along with it. I don't understand it, to be honest with you, but yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I don't get it. So anyways, I'll continue on a little bit here. Let's continue on.
Her neighbors discovered the 3 bodies looking in the front window. A sliding back door was found slightly ajar, apparently for the family dog. But there were no footprints in the snow, no sign of forced entry. Inside, detectives would find a scene of domestic horror.
Domestic horror. They would find really a scene of domestic horror. Did you hear what he said there? A scene of domestic horror. Man, this guy's, it's too much. Definitely not a journalist. A reporter. I don't know if you would even call him that. Something very, very strange. I mean, domestic scene of horror. They're just feeding on different people, and it's sad. You know, it's really sad how people can buy into it. I don't know. I'm just, I don't really know. I don't understand it, to be honest with you. So, it's just, I'm sorry. It's just too much. It's too much. These guys are too much.
Little love notes the couple left for each other around the house. An innocent child's room. Much of the crime scene itself we will not show you.
Oh, yeah, much of the crime scene we will not show you. They don't show you anything. What are they showing you here? They're not going to show you the bullet that was in the attic that the police missed. They're not going to show you the bullet that rolled out of this carpet over here, where this number 2 is. A bullet rolls out of the carpet 2 days later that the police missed. If they can miss bullets, don't you think they could miss anything that would show David Crowley did this? Of course. So it all comes back to, well, then what do they prove? What do they use to prove David Crowley did this? This. I apologize for this. Okay. There it is. All right. So that's good.
Bodies were found in the living room next to each other. They were badly decomposed and scavenged by the family dog. Judging by the male pilot...
so that's the other thing. They're badly decomposed, which if you've watched any of Catherine's videos, any of Sophia's videos that they've done, you know, the decompose, there's early to moderate in the autopsy results are what matter. Early to moderate is what they show. Heavily decomped is what is in the police reports by police officers. But the autopsies clearly show early to moderate. So that's why it's like, how long were these bodies there for is another big thing. So they can't really prove how long the bodies were there for. They can't even prove that David shot anybody. They can't prove any of this stuff. They can't even prove that the dog ate these bodies. We can assume the dog did, and I'm willing to assume that they did. We spoke with many, we've had several people speak with many veterinarians, and we get a different answer every time, unfortunately, or maybe that's good. Maybe that's good because it allows us, hopefully it keeps us keeping an open mind to, we don't really know. And the problem is, because the police did not do any tests, they don't really know. They don't really know if the dog ate any of those bodies. That's the sad thing. One test would have probably done that. There's a lot of tests that they don't do. And I don't know the difficulties or the prices or all of that, what it would be, but it just seems kind of logical to me that nobody is reporting that the dog had blood or anything like that on its mouth or on its, teeth or anything like that, which we've talked when Krippert talked with one vet up in Canada. I said, well, the dog could have licked it all off, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. But again, it's like, well, what are they using to prove that the dog was sitting there eating anything? They didn't see the dog eating the bodies. They didn't do any tests that would show that the dog ate these bodies. So what are they basing it on? If the bodies are so quote unquote heavily, if the decomposition rate is so far in, how would they even know? And it raises so many other questions. There's so many other things. You can go back and look at the body placements and how the bodies were. David's hand is sticking up in the air for any dog to eat. Doesn't eat it, but eats the other hand. And then Rania, he goes after her whole arm, eats her whole arm, somehow breaks her third rib, but doesn't eat her other hand. Then goes after Kamel, eats her head, eats her body, eats her, not her body, but eats her arms. Not her arms, her hands, her two hands. One hand that is above her head, other hand that is pretty much under her body. And this dog eats all of that from what they're telling us. It's very interesting. I don't know. I find it interesting, at least. Maybe I'm wrong, but
up and a paper in the home. The murder-suicide took place the day after Christmas. David shooting Kamel twice in the head, Rania once, before shooting himself. Between their bodies, a Quran with pages torn out, opened to a traditional forgiveness prayer. And there on the wall, above the bodies.
And this is where it gets interesting. Maybe I should go back a few seconds here.
David shooting Kamel twice in the head.
Shooting Kamel twice in the head. Can't prove it. We don't know he shot her. But we're just going to assume. That's all they're doing. They're assuming David did this.
Rania once before shooting
and
himself.
Shot his daughter and then shot himself. You'd think they would have something here to back this up. They don't.
Between their bodies, a Quran.
This is another interesting. Between their bodies, a Quran. The Quran was very close to David's left hand. It was very bloody. And so he just happened to draw. If you look at where the Quran is, where it was placed next to David's body, it looks like it was placed there next to David's body. Not that David was doing this weird ritual or ripping out pages and then set it right there. Come on. It's not in the middle of these bodies. It's closer to David's left leg, really. But also these pages are everywhere. They're everywhere. They're on the other side of Kamel. They're on several sides of Kamel. It's just very interesting where they are and where they are.
With pages torn out, opened to a traditional forgiveness prayer.
And this is interesting too, the open to a traditional forgiveness prayer. You can see where it's pages open torn to. Out. So pages torn out. See, he goes from the Quran to pages that are torn out, right? So is the pages open to a forgiveness prayer? Or is it other things? Is it in the Quran? Is the Quran open to a forgiveness prayer? It's just a lot of hokey pokey, a lot of dancing around, and just not a lot of facts, not a lot of what we would hope to see in this case. Just factual evidence. I mean, that's all. I think that's all people are looking for. I don't think they're looking for anything else. So it's pretty sad.
To a traditional forgiveness prayer. And there on the wall, above the bodies, scrawled in blood, the words, Allah Akbar, God is the greatest.
Allahu Akbar, God is the greatest. And there it is right there. Now, this is the first time. Remember, this is in January of 2016. This is still early. This is before the sloppy mentor came out or anything like that. This is stuff that was redacted in the original police reports. Later, we got the unredacted versions of those police reports that were missing a couple pages for some reason. So all of this is very interesting too. Now, I guess the alums didn't want, they were trying to pretty much hide this, but that's not the police's job, right? They can, I mean, how can they hide something like this? This is going to come out. And they know that. Even in the 464 photos that we got a little bit later after this, they came out. Now, from what we were told, Tom Lyden was given a lot of photos and documents that he shouldn't have been given. And isn't it interesting that after that, boom, it was like, we didn't really get much. 94 pages, police reports, 464 photos. If we would have stopped there, that's all we would have gotten. I think that's what they were hoping for. Thankfully, that didn't happen. And we had a lot of great people who kept digging and kept asking and got those documents, got the other documents, and all these documents. There's no need to hide the documents. All they had to do was show us what proved David Crowley guilty. They couldn't do it. They could not give us 13-page report like we've seen in other cases, 10-page report, a 2-page report, something that says, this is what happened, this is why David is guilty. That's all they had to do. Not withhold evidence like this that we're seeing here. Not try to retract things like we're seeing here that they did. All of the Muslim mention, all the Allahu Akbar, the blood writing mention, they tried to hide that from the public. Why? If David snapped, wouldn't that help your case? Wouldn't that help people see why David, quote unquote, snapped? What kind of a sane person would not write this here? But it was like so far-fetched, or, maybe they really respected the Alam family that much that they wanted to keep them away. Tom Lyden didn't. Put it right out here for everybody. Why do you think Tom Lyden did that? Eric Nelson was not happy that Tom Lyden did this at that time because Eric Nelson's film hadn't come out. Eric Nelson probably wanted to come out there during his film. And that didn't happen. Once this information here came out, I think it changed a lot of people's minds. I think some of them may have realized that they were duped, they were tricked. And this case took a very bad turn. Very bad turn. And not for truth. And I think there was a lot of issues created. A lot of problems happened within the Gray State Goons once all this came out.
Who wrote Allah Akbar on the wall?
He did.
That is a lie. They cannot prove David Crowley wrote that. He lied right there. Look at his face there. It's the face of somebody who just lied to Tom Lyden and to everybody watching this. A complete lie. Because you can't say that. All right. Let's continue.
In her blood.
Yes.
Why did he do that?
We believe.
Look at that.
That was.
We believe in her blood. See, so they don't know that he did it. That's the first thing. They don't know that David did this. But then he goes on, well, we believe Based on what? You believe this based on what? Doesn't make sense to me.
It's just kind of a parting shot.
A parting shot. Yeah, a parting shot. There it is. It was a parting shot. All right, so I'll stop this one right there. I'll be back next time. We'll talk more about this roasting of Tom Lyden. All right, and welcome back now. We're going to go through part 2 here, discussing Mr. Lyden. Just checking the audio. All right, audio sounds pretty good. Cool. All right, so let's get back into the roasting of Tom Lyden, if you want to call it that. But this is something I've been wanting to cover for a long time, just Tom Lyden's news report about David Crowley's death back in January of 2016. We did part 1. We're going to go ahead and continue on here with part number 2. So I will pull this up, and hopefully everybody can see that there. And we'll go ahead and get right into this. So we left off at about, I moved it back a little bit, but 12:50, and you can see there's still some time to go there. So we'll see how far we can get with this one without going crazy. How about that? Pretty good concept, I would say. Hope everybody can hear it.
And there on the wall, above the bodies, scrawled in blood, the words, Allah Akbar, God is the greatest.
Who wrote Allah Akbar on the wall?
He did.
Now, as we talked about before, he says he did. No follow-up. Tom Lyden doesn't push him on it. Okay, what'd you guys have? Okay, so you must have been able to prove it, right? So you must have had his DNA on there. Oh, no, we didn't. Okay, you must have had his fingerprints. No, we didn't have that either. You must have had something to show David did this. Blood on his fingertips. We only had one hand in here. So again, nothing. It's about nothing. You can look at his face right there. But it's just, he did. That's it. Not that we believe or this or that. When it comes to why, then it's that we believe this or that. But it's not how. How do you know that David did this? The question is never asked, right? Because I don't want to ask that question because it may make you think.
In her blood?
Yes.
Why did he do that?
We believe that was just kind of a parting shot.
That's one of the biggest pauses, I think. And as somebody who was born with a stutter, it's kind of like, wow, this guy looks super nervous, really having a hard time answering. If he's not, there's no confidence. There's no confidence in this theory that David Crowley is guilty. And that's what you need, especially when you're talking about someone you're accusing of being a child killer. Someone you're accusing of domestic abuse, whether it's verbal or physical, of someone who committed suicide, which is one of probably not the most cowardly act a person can do, aside from killing other people, is to kill yourself. In the eyes of God, that's one of the things you cannot do as a Christian. So that face tells it all right there.
To who?
Probably at her.
You can go back a little bit. Tom Lyden's face, if we have that. I don't know if that's...
Did he do that?
I want to pause it when it gets to his face.
We believe that was just kind of a parting shot.
Look at Tom Lyden's face. Does he even believe what's going on? It's just kind of a, I don't know. It's a very ego-driven guy there. To who? Well, there's no question of, okay, what proves David did it? No, we're just going to move on. We're just going to roll over that very important fact, the most important fact of this whole case. We're going to ignore that. That's what they're doing here. It's covering up after the fact of this. All right? It's CYA. Cover your own. Whatever you want to call it. But it's not journalist. He's not being a journalist. This is not even reporting the news. This has helped to stage a crime scene. This has helped to enforce that staging. This has helped to enforce the accusations, the baseless accusations. And they are baseless, however you want to look at it. But that face says it all right there.
To who?
To who?
Probably at her for having a Muslim past.
Probably at her for having a Muslim past, really. That's the best that they could come up with. Probably. Probably this, probably that. We don't live in the world of probablys, especially when it comes to law enforcement. So they know better. And Tom Lyden knows better. He's pushed other police officers. Why isn't he pushing this one? What's so different? What's so special about this one? What made Tom Lyden get neutered during this case? What is the difference? I don't know, seems a little strange to me, but maybe that's just me.
David did not kill himself right away. He left a trail of footprints, tracking Kamel's blood through the house. In the living room, his bloody fingerprint is on a laptop, open to a tech.
Okay, we gotta go back. I'm sorry. I gotta go back. Got to go back there. Let's go here.
David did not kill himself right away.
See, the thing is, they don't even know if David killed himself. They don't even know that. So how would they know when David killed himself and when David didn't? David didn't kill himself right away from what? From when? It's setting a narrative to trick you. That's what this report was designed to do, is trick you. And it's up to you. Some people like to be tricked. Some people are very gullible. Some people understand and don't care, or maybe they're scared. Whatever it was. It's a simple fact. If they can't even prove David shot himself, how would they be able to speculate on when David shot himself, right? Seems logical.
He left a trail of footprints, tracking.
That's also not true. A trail of footprints? No, the footprints are kind of random, kind of scattered. There's maybe 3, 4 footprints in this whole house here, in this one confined area, that don't really make sense when you look at them. They don't. And you can even see this image here. When I first saw this image, and this is still one of the images to me, it looks more like a handprint than a footprint. This one here, where the E is, right? 14. Some of the other ones, you know, to me they look like footprints, definitely. But I mean, this one is one of the. This looks like a pinky right here. That's one big pinky toe. But I mean, again, the thing is, there were not footprints all over the house. There was not a trail. These weren't. There wasn't a trail. We're really in. And even this is not a trail. These two, there's no trail there. They're almost stepping over each other. Anyways. And wiped. If you look at this area, it's kind of wiped. So.
Kamel's blood through the house.
Kamel's blood through the house. And that's another thing. It's not through the house. Again, it's just in that one confined area next to the kitchen island. And it's 3, maybe 4 visible bloody footprints. That's it. Listen to what he says. Now, what we're looking at here is the palm print, a palm print that was found on the laptop on the kitchen island. Listen to what this liar says here.
In the living room, his bloody fingerprint is on a laptop.
There is no evidence. They were not able to prove this is David's print. Okay? No fingerprints, no palm prints. Why is he lying? If maybe he didn't read the documents, maybe he's reading from a script, maybe he's helped to stage a scene here. Whatever it is, it's not based on fact.
Open to a text file with only a single.
So again, this is in the on the kitchen island, and you can see there's prints, there's blood. They're never able. There's a lot of prints. There's a lot of DNA, a lot of blood, all that stuff. None of it ever is tied back to David Crowley, and they make it sound like it is, and it's not. That is a lie. How do we know? Because we have the actual documents that show that actually show that they were unable to prove, to tie David's DNA to it, to tie David's fingerprints to those prints that they found. There are some good prints on there. And if they can't tie them to David, it raises a lot of questions. I mean, lazy armchair quarterbacking would say, well, it has to be David's. It's got to be David's. Is that the right palm? Is that the left palm? Whatever it is, but they're just kind of speculating, well, it must be David's. The same way they speculate on all of these other things. But the problem with this one, the problem with the fingerprints and with the actual DNA is we have the facts of the DNA and of the fingerprints. David's fingerprints are not here. We could speculate and say, well, they must be David's. We can't prove it. And again, if you can't prove that those were David's fingerprints, why would you speculate that it was him who was responsible for these prints that we see in these photos, for the prints that we see on the kitchen island and everywhere else, right?
Sentence. I have loved you all with all of my heart.
And so that one, I have loved you all with all of my heart, was one that was used as a quote-unquote suicide note to say, well, it wasn't a suicide note, but it really was. I mean, that's kind of the theory of people who want to believe David did it, right? But again, we don't know if he wrote that, when he wrote that. We do know that now. In one of the more recent documents that we got, one of the electronic ones, that I have loved you all with all of my heart was a typed note that was last saved on, or that started on December 19th. December 19th of 2014 is when that was written. Well before any of these crimes could have happened, even by their own theory, even by the 3-week theory. So what relevance does that have? It's more evidence of staging the crime scene. We never get a really good photo of it, but it does say myth up here, and now that we have the BCA or the Dakota County Electronic Crime Scene Unit documents that really show that this was created on December 19th, 2014. It's a very important date, by the way, December 19th, because it's a very important date. Let's put it like that for now. But this was opened. Again, all the police had to do was swab this keyboard, just touch any keys on this keyboard, and the laptop woke up out of sleep mode. No password protection required. Same with the MacBook in David's office, but not the same with Kamel's Surface Pro. Isn't that interesting? So all David's stuff was left open and set to where anybody could walk in there and turn it on. What I would be interested to know in the metadata, I guess, of if it's possible to find out when the sleep settings, when the password protection settings, were they ever changed? Were they ever changed any time? Or was this just normal? David just didn't use any passwords on any of his computers and just left them wide open for anyone to come in and take a peek at. I'd be interested to know that. The metadata would show that, I'm sure. If the settings, the password protection settings, the sleep mode settings were ever changed, because this is way too easy. The police come in, they move anything on the keyboard, they touch the trackpad, they move any of the keys, they swab it, and it turns on to what we're seeing here. How convenient, right? Because right before you murder somebody, you do all this. You leave it all open. A small text box. You have multiple screens, multiple pop-up windows here open. Very interesting to me. Something similar in the office bedroom. When they touch it, it wakes up. No password protection, nothing. But not the same with Kamel's. Not the same with their phones. These two crucial pieces here. And then, of course, they leave open the notepad too. It's another thing. It's all right there, laid out for the police as soon as they walk in. Oh, I find it pretty interesting.
With only a single sentence, I have loved you all with all of my heart. In the home office on a notepad, more bloody fingerprints and the words, submit to Allah now.
There it is. So more bloody fingerprints there. Not David's bloody finger, but just bloody fingerprints, right? So pretty interesting. They're only able, in that office room, they're only able to tie David's left middle finger via prints, right? That's about it. But you do handwriting comparisons, handwriting samples, things like that. They look at the handwriting, but they're never really able to say, yeah, this is David's. I mean, I think any handwriting expert could pretty much look at David's handwriting and then look at what we see there, and they could decide for themselves if it was David's or if it wasn't. And if it was under duress would be another interesting thing. Or if it was normal, the way he normally wrote. And what does it mean is another thing. And how does it tie into this? The lack of blood there on that writing, on that paper. That would have had to have been something written a little bit later, I would say, because if you go back and look at that, I know this is not a very good one, but you can see it's just on the edges here. So very nicely written, and then the pen is just placed in a nice area right next to it, right? Because we all do that. Flip it open here, flip open the page, and halfway through, and just write all of that right there. Pretty interesting stuff to me. But looking at the news report, I know we had a comment about the first one that I did. Maybe I can read that. That was a pretty good comment. If they have it here. Boom, 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 boom. So this was a comment left by mandatory pericarditis. I can't even pronounce it. Pericarditis. So sorry for butchering that. But this person left the comment, I wouldn't have been able to force myself to have been subjected to hearing that hard sell from mainstream media any longer than 1 minute into it, if not for you being there to interject with a few facts. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And that's really the whole thing. It's like this thing can be broken down over and over again, but because it's so bad. But some people who don't know the other side, who just think, well, Tom Lyden must have done his research, right? He must have had some facts to back these things up. And you come to find, no, he didn't. Didn't have anything. So this person else says, so I made it to the end, but I have to say it makes me angry to know they're still catching new fish with the same old bait and cementing it for the ones they already had. Good point. Yep, same script, right? Same script, same program. And people are still falling for it. There's a lot of people that still fell for the official theory. Still believe it. Still believe that David did this. More we look at the stuff like this, how can you believe any of that? Okay.
And the words, "Submit to Allah now."
This is a person that was not thinking clearly.
So here we have doctor, the chief doctor, right? I mean, this guy must be a medical doctor, or a psychologist, and he wasn't thinking clearly. I don't think you're thinking clearly. I look at this guy and look into his eyes and listen to what he's saying, and I don't think you're thinking clearly at all. You're not thinking like a police officer should. A logical police officer rushing to judgment in this way. He wasn't thinking clearly. How do you know? How do you know he was or what he wasn't doing there? You know so very little. But what you speculate on, you can't even prove it. You know, you can't even back it up. It's just, well, they move on from assumption to assumption to assumption to assumption. And Tom Lyden is just sitting there like some weirdo, just digging it all, just loving it all, and just, you know, acting like he really cares, and he has that sincere look, right? But if he was so sincere, why isn't he asking some sincere, real questions? If he really cared, he would. Tom Lyden really cared, he would be grilling this guy in a polite way, but say, what do you guys have? Can't do that, though, because that would expose them. Expose them as the frauds they are.
Committed a horrible act by taking.
I mean, it's the slander against David. It's the accusations constantly. They have to constantly reinforce the slander, reinforce the attack on David, reinforce David is a murderer, a child killer. The one thing they don't enforce is what they base it on, right?
Taking those lives, his mind at that point was deranged. He just was.
I mean, that's the other. His mind at that point was deranged. Based on what? Based on what he was working on? I mean, there should be something. I mean, we got David's journals. You have his internet search history. We know his last Facebook posts and things like that. The few that weren't, or you know, most of them except for one or two that were hidden after David's death, were taken down. But you have it all there. Where is this deranged theory coming from? Where is this descent into madness? Where is the death of a dystopian? Where is all that coming from? Where's all this hit piece? All of these hit pieces coming from? It's very interesting and very sad.
Was not in a normal state. He wasn't thinking rationally.
I would think for an officer to be thinking rationally, here's what the officer should do to think rationally. Get some evidence. Focus on the facts, not on your feelings, not on the speculation. Don't be lazy. And just look at the red carpet that was rolled out for you and walk on it with the paparazzi looking on, like this guy's looking. Cheering you on. Telling you what a great job you're doing. When you're not finding what happened to this 5-year-old child. What caused her to be brutally murdered? What happened to this 28-year-old woman? What happened to this United States soldier who served this country? Who was stop-lossed? A filmmaker. A Minnesota native. And this is all happening in Minnesota here. Well, look what they're trying to do to David Crowley. Look at how they're trying to craft this story here. It's very sad.
What do you make of him scrawling Allah Akbar?
That, I believe, is...
Now listen to this, because you're going to hear... If you ever heard people, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people who have the same bullet points, they change it up a little bit, make it a little bit nicer, a little bit different. That's the same bullet points here.
That's David being sarcastic. That's him...
Just like the police officer said, it was a shot at David, a parting shot, right? David was doing a parting shot. Where do you think that came from? Guys like this.
Possibly throwing a jab.
A jab at Kamel's family?
Possibly.
Because of the whole Muslim thing. Again, so here you have, I mean, they're all walking hand in hand down the yellow brick road, right? Well, they know there's no place like Kansas. There's no place like home. Look at what they're doing. Look at how they're treating David. I mean, this is just very sad. It's pathetic. The way that they treat this guy, their friend. The way that the police would treat one of their citizens. Not giving him the benefit of the doubt. But almost immediately, within 24 hours at best, accusing David Crowley of this horrific crime. Is that justice? Is that what you call justice?
Kamel, who was born and raised in Pakistan, had converted from Islam to Christianity when the couple married. He was in the army, she was in college, but religion never seemed to play a significant role in their lives, according to family and friends.
Well, there you have it right there. If religion never played a significant role in their lives, then why do they keep bringing that up? Why do they keep going back that David, this was a parting shot? Really? He went to this length to do this? To Kamel's father, who he was very close with? Kamel's mother, who he was very close with? Kamel's sister, who he was very close with? Taught her how to drive? And this is what this is a parting shot here? It's so far-fetched. It's so far-fetched. And you really have to hate David. You really have to be mad at David in order to believe this garbage.
Allah Akbar they see as a twisted riddle, like something from one of David's...
A twisted riddle, like something from one of David's scripts, right?
Scripts.
Right. There you go, yeah. A twisted riddle, like something from one of David's scripts. I mean, look at the speculation. This is why probably I didn't really... This was not a priority, because Tom Lyden just pretty much rips into himself in this. And it's like, wow, this guy... Talk about losing all credibility. And this, whatever this was, a 15-minute news report by Tom Lyden. It tells you everything. It tells you everything you need to know. Where's the good news journalist? Where's the journalist on these local TV shows and these local newspapers that says, wait a minute, guys. Do we have anything that really shows David did this? Where's that news report? Why was that hidden? Why is that not more public? Why aren't we hearing about that stuff? It doesn't fit in with what they want. With what they want, how they want to portray David. It doesn't fit in with that. So they just shy away from it. Very sad. Very sad what they do.
A plot twist without resolution. We may never know what made David Crowley finally snap.
Here we go again. We may never know what made David Crowley finally snap, but we're going to say David Crowley finally snapped. Where's the logic in that? I don't understand that. Why so much hatred towards David? Why are they just foaming at the mouth to paint this guy as a killer? Is it a juicy story? Is that why the staged crime scene, works well with losers like Tom Lyden? Is that why it worked well with losers like some of these police officers at the very top who were controlling this and not letting good police officers do their job? Why do they hate David so much? What did he do to them? It's pretty interesting to me.
Certainly the conspiracy theorists will fill in some of those gaps.
So, yeah, we'll fill in some of those gaps. We'll fill in the truth And I think that's pretty much done here. For anyone that wants to see it, anyone that wants to find it, it's there. The gaps are filled, like we just covered, in these two shows here. The major gaps are all filled because it all comes down to everything they're pretty much saying that David did. They cannot prove. They cannot back it up. So there's your gaps that are filled. Case closed.
But we do know this. There are some 1,500 murder-suicides in the U.S. every year. They account for about...
And see, this is the problem. When you start bringing in those stats, the real murder and suicide stats, you're putting all of those stats into question. This is like the person who falsely accuses someone of domestic violence, for example, and it turns out not to be true, but they still get lumped into those stats. It throws out the real people who are victims of those crimes. It puts it all into question. So it's a very irresponsible thing to just say, yeah, this is a suicide, this is a murder, let's add it to the stats, because then it calls into question how many other stats, how many other of those cases could be fabricated, could not be true, are not accurate, right? And that's the sad thing. That's one of the sad things here, is then it calls into all those questions, because we know David was added to certain areas. Dan Hennon knows more about this, but David Crowley was added to domestic violence stats, and there's no proof of domestic violence. He's going to be added to murderer stats, and there's no proof that he was a murderer. He's going to be added to the suicide stats when there's no proof that he truly killed himself. So it calls into question all of the other people that he's talking about. Calls all that into question. So now you've not only discredited yourself, you're helping to discredit those stats, which may otherwise have been accurate.
5% of all homicides, and their numbers seem to be increasing. And the Crowley case certainly fit the pattern of domestic violence.
It did not fit the pattern of domestic violence. That is the whole problem right there. But that's what they want. That's why they took this case on. If it didn't fit the pattern of domestic violence in their view, do you think they would be covering it? No. If they wanted to really do a real piece on this story, it wouldn't be as juicy. It wouldn't be as negative. It would be a lot of questions. That's what the Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook group does. Ask these questions that these losers won't ask. Focus on the facts that these losers won't focus on. Examine the documents. Read the documents. Understand the documents. And discuss the documents. They won't do that. These losers won't do that. Because they like losing. Natural born losers.
Kamel was everything to David. And if there...
So Kamel was everything to David, but he's going to kill her and kill his daughter. Okay.
There was no Kamel, there is no David.
Okay, so there's no if there's no Kamel, there's no David. So he's gonna kill her, and then there's no Kamel, so I'm gonna kill myself. I mean, this guy is just lost. He's smoked one too many blunts.
According to hundreds of pages of police reports, no one ever saw David physically abuse his family. But that's also
well. There you go. I mean, there, and I know what he's going to say next here, but there it is. It just they want to keep this speculation out there. Notice they didn't say that part first. They said first their theory was, well, he fits in line with the domestic abuse cases because we don't hear about him, right? We don't know what's happening. It's a paranoia thing. These people are very paranoid. They want you looking at your partner. They want you looking at your partner's partner. They want you looking at everybody. Could they be a domestic abuser? Well, there's no signs, but so what? Remember, David didn't have any signs. It's all horse crap.
True, with about half of all domestic homicides, there's no prior abuse. Hendricks also believes
there's no prior abuse and there's no proof of abuse, period. Now, when he says, quote unquote, abuse, he's talking about murder. That's a serious Allegation. And I wish I wish they would be sued for slander.
Believes his friend had undiagnosed post-traumatic stress.
Right. We're gonna diagnose everybody. We're gonna do our self-diagnosis. Post-traumatic stress, PTSD. Well, he had PTSD. It's laziness. And that's another thing. When you start bringing that in, it takes away from people who really do have PTSD again. Is that what they want? Do they like the land of confusion, of confusing people? It seems like it. Seems like that's exactly what they like doing.
From his tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. There was certainly easy access to guns in the home. David had 10 weapons.
Easy access to guns. Yeah, he had multiple guns in that home. Most of them were in the basement. So I don't know about if that's easy access or not, but okay, let's go with it. Let's say it's easy access to these guns. Then it's interesting with the gun and the gun safe. Now his fingerprints, his DNA, nothing is on that gun safe. It's all Kamel's. It's no blood on the gun safe. Just Kamel's DNA. But he's the one that killed everybody, right? Well, you can't say Kamel did it because she was shot twice, so she's not Gary Webb. We know Kamel is not Gary Webb, who was able to shoot himself twice somehow. So that narrative doesn't work. It seems like there's a lot of scrambling going on. And then all of this we're looking at, whether Tom Lyden, the police, whether they know it or not, this is all part of a cover-up. Whether they're contributing to it knowingly or unknowingly, they're helping with that. They're not helping get justice. They're not helping find the truth. So what else could you call it? They're part of the problem, not part of the solution. Let's go on.
It's all purchased legally. And there was apparently substance abuse. He regularly smoked marijuana.
I love that one. He regularly smoked marijuana. He didn't start smoking. Remember, David died when he was 29, and he didn't start smoking until 28 and a half. It's a pretty short time. This is a very small amount of weed. In California, this is Bammer weed here. This ain't even good weed. The other thing, here's the kicker that I'm sure Tom Lyden doesn't want you to know, or doesn't even know. Maybe he doesn't know himself. But guess what the toxicology report showed? No weed in his system. And we know it stays in there for at least 30 days, depending on what type of test that you do. It wasn't even in his system. It's pretty interesting to me.
Marijuana, and was known to drink absinthe.
But we have no idea what pushed him over the edge.
Right. We don't know what.
We don't know. We have no motive, is what they're saying here. This is a fancy way of saying we have no motive. We don't have anything. But I'm going to sit here and just accuse this guy. Because I'm lazy. That's what I do. That's what he's basically saying. And Tom Lyden said, okay, cool. That sounds good. Let's go find some cats.
The trigger was, what was the breaking point?
But no trigger, no breaking point, no motive, no nothing. But he did it. Right. Great investigating by the officers. And wonderful way to approach journalism and news reporting by Tom Lyden. Great job, guys. Losers of the century. And you still got a killer out there, right? Because if it isn't David, there's someone else who did this. Or multiple people. And they're still out there.
That is not the same as not knowing who pulled the trigger.
He did.
They do not know who pulled the trigger. That also needs to be very, very clear. And I'll just pull up some of my notes from my book. And let's look at what they found. What did they find on the trigger, right? I mean, that would be everybody's first question. Okay, well, let's look at the trigger. Let's look at the gun. This is from the living room chapter, page 35 of the original book. All right. Just going to read about what they found on the gun. Okay. Quote, the presence of blood was found on the grip, the slide, the trigger, and muzzle of the gun. Okay, that's where the blood was found. On the grip, the slide, the trigger, and the muzzle. Okay, the magazine, which is labeled item 1B, the magazine had ridge detail blood that was found on it. So there's blood on the magazine. How does blood get on a magazine? Ridge detail. That's pretty interesting. Not just blood, not a splatter of blood or a spot of blood. Ridge detail blood on the magazine. Okay, so there were several DNA mixtures found on the gun, on the trigger, and the magazine. DNA results show DNA of 2 or more individuals on the trigger. 2 or more. With one of those being David Crowley. So that's their biggest thing they have right there. But there's someone else on the trigger. Who else is on that trigger? Right? His DNA should be on the trigger. It's his gun. Why is somebody else's DNA on the trigger? Think about that. Okay, so the DNA on the trigger did not match Kamel. So it wasn't Kamel. She's not responsible for the other DNA on that trigger. But Rania could not be excluded. That's pretty interesting too, right? Are we saying David and Rania were struggling for a gun? That's hard to believe, but considering what they've told us so far, in their eyes, maybe not. On the trigger, though. That is on the trigger. Let's look at the magazine. Okay, in the magazine, there were 2 or more DNA profiles found. The major DNA profile matched David Crowley on the magazine. All right, an estimated 99.9997% of the general population was excluded from being possible contributors, but Kamel and Rania could not be excluded. So they can't be excluded. So Kamel can't be excluded from the magazine, but she's excluded from the trigger. She's not on the trigger. Her DNA is not on that trigger. It's on the magazine. What do you think about that? And that's pretty much all that was tested as far as the DNA related to the gun and the magazine. It's not that much. It's really not that much. So that's pretty fascinating to me still. Someone else's DNA is on that trigger of the alleged murder weapon. It's not Kamel. You can speculate that it's Rania. If it's not her, then who? All right, so let's see. Found hairs and fibers on the gun and the magazine. So let's talk about the latent prints from the gun and the magazine. Latent print results revolved around 2 of 3 latent prints suitable for comparison. 1 found on the gun and 1 found on the magazine. Now, LP1A-1 is a latent, so there was a latent print there was a latent palm print found on the gun. According to latent print results, no known palm prints for David Timothy Crowley were submitted or found in the BCA files for comparison to the palm print on the gun. I'll read that again. No known palm prints for David were submitted or found in the BCA files for comparison to the palm print on the gun. This would be the same case with the palm print on the laptop on the kitchen island. They don't have his palm print. They can't put him there. So the palm print that they find on the gun, they cannot tie to David Crowley. Whose palm print is on the gun then? Is it David's and they just can't tie it to him? Or is it somebody else's? Well, they just let everything drop there and just say that it was David. I mean, can you imagine that? Saying, well, we don't know that this is David's print on the gun, but we're just going to say that David did this. David shot everybody. When it could be somebody else's palm print on the gun. They don't test anybody else, so it could be anybody. So that is with the gun. That is with the palm print. Okay. Now there is a latent fingerprint found on the magazine. And we've seen photos of that. However, this too cannot be tied to David Crowley due to the limited quality and quantity of information in the latent print. And there's some notes here. Jennifer Kostrowski consulted with Dennis Randall about the latent fingerprint. And they agreed it could be one or two prints. And it was unusual. Coupled with low quality makes it difficult to determine. So again, 2 DNAs on the trigger, 2 prints on the magazine. The palm print on the gun, none of it. None of it. Nothing about the magazine, nothing about the palm print. Those 2 latent prints cannot be tied to David. That's right. Those 2 latent prints cannot be tied to David. The only latent print that is tied to David is the one that we mentioned, the left middle finger in David's office. That is related to the note that was written, quote unquote note that was written. Open the Rise Now, most recent version. Make sure it's the most recent version. Submit to Allah. It's a pitch. It's a pitch. So that's really it. When you think about the DNA of what they would need to tie David Crowley, that's what you want. Is he on the gun? Yes. His DNA is on the trigger. Somebody else's is too. Okay. Well then, why would you just say that it was just David? You can't do that, right? These are just some of the things that I tried to mention in my book, and didn't really want to throw a lot of my own opinions in there. Wanted to try to give you just the facts of what these documents say. And I see some things that I have to go back and change, specifically what we were just talking about here, of what it sounds like when we're talking about, like I wrote here on page 36, several blood mixtures were found on the gun, but they're not blood mixtures, right? They could be DNA mixtures too. But it does depend, because sometimes they're swabbing DNA, sometimes they're swabbing blood. So it does depend on that. But the facts still remain the same of what they can tie David to and what they can't. And the fact that they ignore these other sources of DNA, the fact that there's possibly 2 prints on the magazine that were unusual. It's pretty interesting to me. And it's not David's DNA. on the magazine, right? I don't know. Okay. Way off topic. Here we go. Almost done.
Did it. I mean, there's no denying it.
There's no, that's the main thing. And that's what they're saying. David did from day one. David did it. There's no denying it. Really? I mean, who says that? Who says that? You just let everything play out. And they act like they did, but they didn't. No, they didn't. The Gray State Goons were out there very early on, going right along with the theory that David Crowley did it. They didn't wait for documents. Documents weren't there yet. They didn't wait for DNA. It wasn't there yet. They were already out there doing their tour, the media tour, the sob tour. Oh, we're so sad. Oh, I don't know what happened. Oh, whatever. Instead of getting out there and saying, you know what, we need to find out what really happened here. It's not what they did. That's why they fail. That's why they're all running and hiding now. That's why they're all a bunch of cowards. They weren't interested in the facts, in the truth. Didn't want to talk about that. They wanted to trick you to believing their narrative, their lies about David Crowley. Some people fell for it. Some didn't.
The friends and family know the conspiracy theorists will find a way to deny just that.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to deny just that. I mean, listen to what Mason Hendricks said. David did it. There's no denying it. And Tom Lyden follows up like a bedroom buddy here. And the conspiracy theorists will find a way to deny. It's easy to deny it. If you can't prove David Crowley did it, of course it's easy. It's logical. It makes the most sense. It's the most common thing in this case. That David didn't do this because you have been unable to prove that he did. You can't just say David did this and that's it. It doesn't work like that. So if you're not going to be able to back it up, if you're not going to add some facts to why you think that, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised. Justice is coming. Don't worry. It comes for all of us.
Valley police also know that despite thousands of hours of forensic work, they'll be accused of a cover-up.
That's a great one. They'll be accused of a cover-up. Well, they're part of it. They're covering this stuff up. They're covering up all of these facts that we know. Why aren't they talking about those facts? What's up with that, right? Like I said, whether they know what they're doing, whether they understand it, it's like, why are you guys doing this? Why are you guys calling this guy a killer? All we've asked for is some proof. And you don't have it. You don't have it. So what do you think is going to happen? What do you expect people to do with that knowledge, that you don't have the evidence to prove David Crowley guilty? What are we supposed to do with that knowledge? How would you react to that?
If life can imitate art, so can death. David Crowley.
Yeah, life can imitate art, but we live in the real world here. These guys are living in a fantasy world, and they want to, right? They want to be the victims here. They want to be the guys who were next to this killer. And that's just not the case. They are the shameful ones. These people are the gray shame. The article I wrote, The Gray Shame, is written about all of these people here. They were so quick to call David the worst things you could ever call somebody. This is your friend? I call that into question. Were you really his friend? Or were you doing it for something else? If you're really his friend, you should be right here with us, friend. Trying to find out what happened, friend. Trying to figure out, okay, why are there so many inconsistencies? Why do the DNA results not show David did this? Why do the latent print results show David didn't do this? Firearms results. On and on and on. And it goes back, well, let's make it easier. What shows he did it? It's the same question we've been asking for 7 years. What proves David Crowley did it? You never get the clear answer, do you? Wonder why? Because they don't know. And if they don't know why he did it, then you ask the other answer. You ask the other question. How do you know he did it? You must have something, right? Must be something to not just waving this out of thin air. But no, they got nothing. They got nothing. All speculation. All right, we're just about done here. Again, thank you everybody for joining me. I appreciate it, as always.
Leaving behind a legacy of paranoia, revealing just how dark.
Leaving behind a legacy of paranoia. Wow. The paranoid people are the ones who are accusing David Crowley of doing this. Those are the real paranoid people. Those are the real people that are scared. Those are the shameful people. But see how they try to turn it back on people that are asking questions? All of a sudden, we're conspiracy theorists for asking questions. All of a sudden, we're conspiracy theorists because we know these facts now and you guys don't. I mean, back then, they knew, Tom Lyden, the Gray State Goons, they knew much more than Danahan and I knew. And we've been proven right. Danahan and I and many others, Justice for David Crowley Family Facebook group, we've been proven right. Everything that we were saying. Everything that we were saying about show us proof. What proves David Crowley guilty? Everything that we were talking about that. And they couldn't do it. They dance around it. They say the truth is coming. We know it, but we can't share it. They would do everything but give you the evidence that would prove David Crowley did this. We didn't start this fire. We didn't draw first blood. That needs to be clear. All we did was lay out the simple questions, the simple facts, and the simple truth. Because these goons could not do it. It was bully tactics. It was threats. It was games. It was all of these weird things that they would do. Try to pit people against each other. Instead of just saying, this is what proves David guilty. Do whatever you want with it. And what we've been doing, what I've been doing, I'll speak for myself, I know others too, this is what proves David is innocent. Do whatever you want with it. That's what the Gray State Goons should be doing. That's where their focus should be. Where's their video on that? Eric Nelson's film? This is supposed to be their answer? You're going to show somebody this and say, hey, this proves David Crowley did this? Are you kidding me? No, not buying it.
The Gray State can be.
This has nothing to do with Islam, but everything.
It's pretty interesting that he would say that, and that's a pretty powerful quote. This has nothing to do with Islam. Yet he said that the writing on the wall was David's jab at Kamel being a Muslim and Kamel's family. Well, that would have something to do with Islam, buddy. That may have a little bit to do with Islam. Wouldn't you agree?
To do with a man that lost his way.
And that's the other thing. A man that lost his way. How did he lose his way? It's just talking point after talking point, but no evidence. Well, he lost his way because this is what he did, right? And there was no real counter back in 2016 to really say, to conclusively prove. That's why you don't hear from these guys now. The more documents, the more facts that we get, the less you're going to hear from these goons. Because all of their lies, all of the things they have been telling people, everything they've been doing to mislead people into thinking David is guilty, it's all been crushed. It's all gone. You can't take it back. You can't take back what you said, but you can learn from it, and you can grow from it, and you can admit that you guys were wrong. And you can admit that David Crowley is not a killer based on the evidence and the facts. You can admit that at any time. So it's interesting that you guys don't.
And ultimately killed his wife, his daughter, and then himself.
And you can see when he says that, watch the eyes, watch the head movement. I don't know if he believes it or not. I don't think he believes it, but maybe he does. Who knows? You know, only he knows, only God knows what's in his heart. I don't. But doesn't come off as a very credible, sincere person to me.
As the Crowleys became increasingly isolated last year, their family made multiple attempts to reach out and help them emotionally and financially. Family members on both sides declined to talk on camera. Quite frankly, they're afraid they'll be harassed by some of these conspiracy theorists out there.
That's my favorite part. It's always the harassment. They're going to be harassed. They're going to be harassed. They're not going to be harassed. They reached out to me. They reached out to me. Come on. There's no harassing. We could talk about harassment if you want, but there's been no harassing on this side. All those guys have reached out to me. How are you going to say that I'm harassing them? That they're threatened, they're not worried about being harassed. These Gray State goons, they're worried that people will not see them as a credible source. They're worried that people will figure out their bullshit and their lies. That's what they're worried about. And that's why they fell. That's why they were so desperate, because the truth is not on their side. Same thing with this guy here, with Tom Lyden. Falls right into that same camp and is just repeating the talking points, just like Mason Hendricks and that police officer. Same talking points. Sean Wright, same talking points. Danny August Mason, same. I mean, they all have the same talking points. Their talking points are conspiring to form a narrative and to hold on to the narrative. But the narrative is broken. It's gone. The official theory is broken, and it cannot come back. It's dead. The official theory has been murdered. Or was it suicided? Because they did everything to kill their own theory. Did they kill their theory? Or did we kill it? Was it murder? Or was it suicide? I'll let you all decide that one.
But they wanted me to relay one painful lesson. If you see friends or family isolating themselves, maybe struggling with depression or mental illness, do not hesitate to reach out to them and to keep on trying. Don't stop. There are resources available, and we've placed some of those numbers at fox9.com.
Nice little bait and switch there, I think. It's a pretty good bait and switch there by Tom Lyden to kind of avoid the real issue, the real topic, and all that, and just go with it. Okay, we're gonna wrap up here, but I do want to play a few minutes of this here.
Their next-door neighbor had assumed they were on a long holiday. He'd even cleared the drive twice with a snowblower. But when he spotted unopened Christmas gifts this week, he peeked in the window.
We received a call from a neighbor that they had seen bodies inside the house, so our police department went.
The neighbor, who says police asked him not to go on camera, says through the window he found David Crowley, a local filmmaker listed as a veteran. Nearby, his wife Kamal and their 5-year-old little girl.
That's the first report.
We just kind of figured.
That's the first report, right? And I put that one there because it's the variation changes. That was January 18th, and here's this one. There's some variations in here. Maybe you'll catch it.
That they had taken off and gone away for the holidays.
This white rambler sat quiet for weeks with such little activity. The next door neighbors began to worry.
I rang the doorbell to see if I could get somebody to come to the door.
When a dog barked inside, the neighbors then looked through a window and asked us not to identify them after they witnessed something no one should ever see.
I looked and there was a gun on the floor.
And I saw like a heap of things, and Then I noticed a human hand.
The neighbors tell us they found the bodies of the father,
David Crowley.
his wife, Crowley, a self-employed dietitian, and the couple's 5-year-old daughter. Apple Valley police call it an apparent murder-suicide. Neighbors knew little of the family except for David Crowley's screenwriting ambition.
You know, this is the January 19th. This is 2 days later that this news report here came out. January 19th, 2015 is another very important day for many reasons, including a bullet that would later be tied to Kamel, found on January 19th. I'm sorry, that would later be tied to Rania, found on January 19th.
And he made a movie called Grace Date. And it was about the militarization of the government.
Seems pretty nervous there. Pretty nervous.
2 years ago, Crowley, a military veteran, publicized the yet-to-be-released film on this internet program.
Hey, Gary, thanks for having us on. Yeah, definitely the Gray State is something that we can turn around and look at, you know, in our own realities.
And whatever reality his family faced was hidden.
I'm going to go back to the first part here.
Their next-door neighbor had assumed they were on a long holiday. He'd even cleared the drive twice with the snowblower. But when he spotted unopened Christmas gifts this week, he peeked in the window.
We received a call from a neighbor that they had seen bodies inside the house, so our police department went.
The neighbor, who says police asked him not to go on camera, says through...
That's it right there. The neighbor who says police asked him not to go on camera. So that's the interesting thing from the first news report. Police asked him not to go on camera. But then you'll see in the next one, it changes a little bit, right?
Gone away for the holidays.
This white rambler sat quiet for weeks with such little activity. The next-door neighbors began to worry.
I rang the doorbell to see if I could get somebody to come to the door.
When a dog barked inside, the neighbors then looked through a window and asked us not to identify them after they witnessed something no one should ever see.
So it's two different news reports. January 18th. It's the police, from what the news report says, it's the police that didn't want the neighbors to be identified, didn't want them to go on camera. The next day, it's the neighbors who don't want to be identified. So interesting.
I looked and there was a gun.
David Crowley's screenwriting ambition.
And he
around and look at, you know, in our own realities.
And whatever reality his family faced was hidden from neighbors, a tragic ending that may never be understood.
Shock.
Shock.
You know, that you have something that happens like that next door, and you don't really know when it happened.
Grim details are emerging from an apparent murder-suicide in Apple Valley, Minnesota today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Christy Larson. A neighbor discovered the bodies of a 5-year-old girl and her parents inside their home. The family had presumably been dead for weeks. Lindsay Savard has the report.
And we just kind of figured that they had taken off and gone away for the holidays.
This white rambler sat quiet for weeks with such little activity. The next-door neighbors began to worry.
I rang the doorbell to see if I could get somebody to come to the door.
When a dog barked inside, the neighbors then looked through a window and asked us not to identify them after they witnessed something no one should ever see.
I looked and there was a gun on the floor.
And I saw like a heap of things, and then I noticed a human hand.
The neighbors tell us they found the bodies of the father,
David Crowley,
his wife, Crowley, a self-employed dietitian, and the couple's 5-year-old daughter. Apple Valley police call it an apparent murder-suicide. Neighbors knew little of the family except for David Crowley's screenwriting ambition.
And he made a movie called Grace Date. And it was about the militarization of the government.
2 years ago, Crowley, a military veteran, publicized the yet-to-be-released film on this internet program.
Hey, Gary, thanks for having us on. Yeah, definitely the Gray State is something that we can turn around and look at, you know, in our own realities.
And whatever reality his family faced was hidden from neighbors, a tragic ending that may never be understood.
Shock.
shock.
I think that's the thing, the tragic thing that one may never be understood. Nobody understood it, but yet they're all quick to say it's a murder or suicide or within 24 hours an apparent murder, suicide. So quickly, so shamefully. Disgusting. Disgusting human beings.
You know, that you have something that happens like that next door, and you know, don't really.
You have something, you don't even know what happened. They don't know what happened next door. There could be a killer out there. There could have been a murderer. You know, we're just calm. We're just very calm about it. No big deal, right? No big deal.
Know when it happened?
Don't know
David
what
Crowley's
happened.
Instagram account shows him posing with numerous guns. Neighbors had also seen.
That's the thing, posting with numerous guns. They don't give you the dates when he was posting with numerous guns, right? It's just he was posting with numerous guns. That's it. In those later days, right? I think it was like September or something when he was at the when they did that garage sale where he was selling off props and things like that, but posting with numerous guns. Again, look at all these school shootings and stuff like that too, you know, and you see all of those, and what do they show you? They want to show you the photo with him with a gun. Look at Oswald, Harvey Lee Oswald. The photo, the proof was a photo of him with a rifle, and that proved he shot John F. Kennedy. It's the same program.
Guns in his garage, but didn't know if they were real or if they were props from his movie.
So, all right, so that'll end this here. Thank you everybody for joining me for this light roasting of Tom Lyden. And you never know, we may be back at some point talking more about Tom Lyden and about everything here. But definitely want to thank you all. I appreciate it, and lots more to come. Put it like that. Lots more to come. So, God bless you all. Until next time.